Hi, welcome to Munch and Mend. This is a video that fits under my degrading and demeaning eating disorder symptoms and behaviours. And this one is actually really hard for me to say and quite a sensitive subject, and that is wetting the bed as an adult when I was in my 20s. So I started wetting the bed when I was in my early 20s. It happened sporadically at first, and then there was a time when I was in a mental hospital where I was doing it I went through an episode where I was doing it every night and every other night. I was absolutely devastated, humiliated, and it was so degrading that I'd regressed to something that I used to do as a very, very young child. As a result, I completely tore myself to pieces because I felt disgusting, I felt pathetic, and I felt like a complete and utter loser. But with everything, there is a reason behind every human behaviour. And I have come to realise that, and I will explain it in the rest of this video. The episode that I had in my mid-20s whilst I was in hospital was absolutely humiliating to the nth degree. Unfortunately, it started to happen at a point, I think, when I was on one-to-one observation. So I had a member of staff with me throughout the night. And this just happened one night that I was with a male member of staff, and I woke up covered in pee, and I had to say to him, I've had an accident, and I've wet the bed. It absolutely was soul destroying, and I crucified myself even more so than if it had happened when I was with a female member of staff, or if it had happened at home, or I could wasn't on one-to-one and I could approach the member of staff that I felt more comfortable with to help sort it out discreetly. I felt a complete freak from this, and I felt completely alone because I didn't know anyone else that had been through adult bedwetting. So it was very much, I'm wrong as a person. Why is this happening to me? And because people don't talk about it necessarily because of the shame and the embarrassment. I wasn't aware that this happened in anyone else, and it just resulted in my eating disorder using it and having more leverage to pull me down that rabbit hole. So what helped me to get past the shame and the embarrassment of my adult bedwetting was learning a few things. And the first thing was when I found out the medical term for adult bedwetting, and that was secondary enuresis. Learning that secondary enuresis was more common than I thought also helped me challenge those self-berating, self-hate and thoughts and all the guilt and shame and disgust that I felt with it. And I actually realised that this can happen in the general population, from time to time through excessive alcohol, or when a person sort of dreams that they're on the toilet because it's so realistic, they can actually release their bladder whilst in a deep sleep because they honestly think that they're on the toilet. As well as this, bedwetting can happen in adults when there is a medical or a physiological reason behind it. And I will go into some of these that I believe contributed to my secondary enuresis. And again, knowing that there were legitimate causes behind it really helped me move past it and bury it in my past and forgive myself, even though I didn't need to forgive myself. So I'll move on to those now. The first possible cause I learned was heightened distress and anxiety. Now, when I was in hospital and I had this episode where it was happening every night or every other night, I was very much in a bad place and had very, very severe distress and anxiety. So that could have been a likely contributing factor to my secondary enuresis. The second possibility and reason behind my bedwetting could have been the medication I was on. I've heard of this quite a few times, and it's also one of those things I learned from when I go for an annual review of my mental health and bipolar type 2. I always have to fill in an annual sort of questionnaire, and one of the questions on it is, do you ever wet the bed? And from talking to others, I do know that medication can be a factor. It doesn't happen with every medication, and it doesn't happen to everyone, but for me, that could have been a contributing factor, and also that helped me sort of relieve that shame and guilt. The third possible cause that I think might have contributed to this very embarrassing symptom was muscle wastage. At the times when I suffered with adult bedwetting, and that episode that happened whilst I was in a mental hospital, I was very much, it was after a severe purging anorexia phase where I'd lost a significant amount of weight. Now, when, you lose a lot of weight and you go, to the extreme, the body can kind of feed off the muscle and cause muscle wastage, which could have affected, those that were around my bladder, which again, contributed to this secondary enuresis. The fourth and last contributing factor that I feel may have resulted in my secondary enuresis and adult bedwetting was my severe purging. Now, I've heard of this before where, extreme purging can cause muscles to weaken, and obviously the pelvic floor as well, because of this, retching from deep within, and it causes kind of stress incontinence and can, contribute. And I think it did contribute to my secondary enuresis. Again, this has really helped me put it in my past and, learn to come to terms with it. Finishing this video, I really hope it has helped some people out there. For me, it is one that's really, really hard to talk about, and I feel quite ashamed of this symptom, although, there's nothing to be ashamed about because there's legitimate reasons behind it. But please, if this is happening to you, don't berate yourself. I know what it's like to feel disgusting, embarrassed and humiliated. But like I say, the behaviour and the symptom can happen from, heightened distress, possible medications, muscle wastage from severe weight loss, and also the weakening of muscles from excessive purging. Also, it can happen from time to time in the general population. It's nothing to be ashamed about, and it is far more common than I thought, and maybe what others out there might think, because you're dealing with this alone. The other thing that really helped me was knowing that it was only temporary, and that was what made me feel better and get past it. I mean, initially it happened sporadically the odd time, and then I went through that episode where it went on for quite a duration, but it was every night or every other night, but it stopped. And then it happened probably a couple of times in my sort of later 20s, and then it's never happened again. So there are things that can be done. It's a lot of people come through it, and it's only temporary. So please don't turn it in on yourself and make everything worse, because it can cause more distress, which then escalates the problems, and it just turns out this vicious cycle, and a very destructive spiral. So please keep fighting. Never ever give up hope, and join me in recovery, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.